Welcome, Archivists. The following transmission was recovered from the sealed astropathic records of Vesperis Mourn. Much of the original message was corrupted, some fragments were missing, others appeared to have been altered after recovery. What remains is a warning, not of invasion, not of plague, not of demons clawing at the walls of reality, but of faith turned inward, of mercy made into a weapon, of confession becoming the door through which something listened. So sit back, lower the lights, let the cathedral bells fade, and prepare yourselves. Tonight, we open the archive. Recovered transmission 1, The Last Confession. Begin playback. There are many ways for a world to fall. Some die on fire, some are devoured beneath chitinous tides. Some are cracked open from orbit, their oceans boiled, their continents turned to black glass beneath the judgment of the Imperium. Some worlds announce their damnation with banners, blood, and screaming idols raised beneath poisoned skies. Some fall when their rulers kneel, some fall when their soldiers break, some fall when the enemies come in force with claws, guns, scripture, and hate. But not all heresies begin with fire. Some begin with a whisper. Some begin with a question. Some begin in the quiet darkness of a confessional, where a broken man kneels before a priest and asks to be forgiven. This is the record of Vesperis Mourn, a shrine world, a place of relics, pilgrimages, incense, bells, and endless prayer. A world that did not rebel, a world that did not scream, a world that did not know it was lost until the doors had already opened. This is the record of Father Kael Varro, beloved confessor of the Basilica of St. Elian Voss, faithful servant of the Emperor, merciful shepherd of the broken, and, in the final sealed writings of the Ordo Hereticus, the first recorded bearer of the title, the Apostate Confessor. Listen carefully. Do not repeat the words of the rite. Do not answer any confession that is not your own, and above all else, do not forgive what waits behind the voice. Vesperis Mourn turned slowly beneath a veil of pale cloud and devotional smoke. From orbit, it appeared almost peaceful. Its continents were not scarred by manufactorum chains or open strip mines. Its oceans were dark and cold, crossed by pilgrim ferries and reliquary barges. Its cities were not true hives, though some were ancient enough and tall enough to pretend. They rose in terraces of black stone and weathered gold, clustered around cathedrals, ossuaries, reliquary towers, and statues so vast that clouds gathered at their shoulders. Every road led to a shrine, every district had a bell, every citizen knew the prayers for birth, labour, war, confession, absolution, and death. Vesperis Mourn did not produce weapons in any great number. It did not supply armoured regiments. It did not forge woodship hulls. It did not refine promethium oceans. It produced faith. That was its tithe. Each year, millions came to Vesperis Mourn to kneel. Pilgrims crossed entire sectors to crawl the long stair of contrition beneath the ashfall of the northern chapels. Noble families sent their disgraced sons to fast in the candle vaults. Wounded soldiers came with empty sleeves, burned faces, and medals they could no longer bear to wear. Administratum clerks came after signing death tallies that reached into the billions. Void-born crews came to wash the taste of the warp from their tongues. And all of them came eventually to the Basilica of St. Elian Voss. The Basilica stood at the heart of the capital city, an immense mountain of black stone, silver reliquaries, stained glass, and rust-red iron. Its towers were carved with the names of martyrs. Its doors were plated with the melted weapons of executed heretics. Its central nave was wide enough for a regiment to march through in formation, and high enough that incense clouds gathered in its rafters like weather. Beneath the nave, beneath the reliquary vaults, beneath the ossuary halls and sealed bones of saints, lay the chamber of absolution. There were 1,000 confessionals in that chamber. Each was carved from old wood, dark with age, polished by the hands of sinners. Each bore the same inscription above its door: "Speak and be judged." For 43 years, Father Kael Varro had sat in those shadows and listened. He had heard the confessions of murderers, deserters, thieves, oathbreakers, informants, cowards, zealots, and grieving mothers who wished they had let their children die sooner. He had heard officers confess to artillery strikes on loyal positions. He had heard surgeons confess that they chose which wounded men received pain relief and which ones received only prayers. He had heard a man confess to hiding bread from his own brother during a famine. He had heard a woman confess that she stopped loving the Emperor for 7 seconds while her son burned. Father Varro listened to all of them. He did not smile often. He did not flatter. He did not offer softness where doctrine demanded iron. But neither was he cruel. That was why they came to him. On a world of bells and judgment, Father Varro had become known for mercy. Not weakness, mercy. There is a difference. He believed sin was a wound. He believed wounds must be cleaned before they could be sealed. He believed confession was not comfort, but surgery. He believed pain could have a soul if the hand that held the blade was steady. And so, when the pilgrim ship Mercy of St. Elian entered orbit above Vesperis Mourn, carrying thousands of refugees, minor clerics, contrite travellers, voidsmen, wounded civilians, and a handful of surviving Imperial soldiers from Warhammer Reach, no one thought it strange that many of them requested confession. The ship had come from war. War always filled the confessionals. The official record stated that the Warhammer campaign had ended in Imperial victory. A heretic uprising had been suppressed. Several regiments had suffered heavy losses. Surviving personnel had been granted passage to Vesperis Mourn for purification, spiritual restoration, and devotional reassignment. It was ordinary. Tragic, yes, but ordinary. The docking authorities recorded nothing suspicious. The pilgrims were thin, hollow-eyed, and quiet. That was not suspicious. The soldiers among them kept to themselves. That was not suspicious. Several shipboard priests requested immediate access to the Basilica of St. Elian Voss. That was not suspicious either. Faithful men seek absolution after war. The first of them came to Father Varro 3 days after planetfall. He entered confessional 973 shortly after the 4th evening bell. Varro remembered the time because he had been about to end his duties for the day. The man behind the screen wore the rough grey robe of a war pilgrim. His boots were military, though the insignia had been scraped away. His hands trembled in his lap. His face was hidden by the lattice between them. For a long moment, he said nothing. Father Varro waited. The man's breathing was slow, too slow, perhaps. Then he spoke. "Bless me, Father, for I obeyed." Varro inclined his head. "Speak." The man swallowed. "I obeyed every order. That is the duty of the soldier. I burned the hab shelters." Varro said nothing. "I shot the wounded." Still, Varro said nothing. "I sealed the lower levels after the bombardment. There were civilians inside. I heard them through the doors." His voice did not shake now. That troubled Varro more than the trembling had. "I told myself obedience was purity," the man continued. "I told myself doubt was weakness. I told myself mercy belonged to higher men than me." The priest closed his eyes. He had heard such sins before, too many times. "The Emperor weighs obedience," Varro said, "but he also weighs the soul that obeys. You are a weapon in the hand of command. Your guilt lies in what you chose freely." The man leaned closer to the screen. "What if I chose to obey?" Varro opened his eyes. "Then you confess obedience without righteousness." A pause. Then the man whispered, "If obedience can damn a man, Father, what does that make the one who commanded him?" The chamber seemed to grow quieter. Varro watched the man through the lattice. A dangerous question. Not heresy, not quiet, but dangerous. "The Emperor commands mankind towards survival," Varro said carefully. "Men fail, officers fail, governors fail, even priests fail. Do not confuse the sin of men with the will of the master of mankind." The veteran lowered his head. "I wanted you to say that." Varro felt the first small tightening in his chest. Why? The man let out a breath that might have been relief. Because that is what they said you would say. Varro sat very still. Who? The veteran did not answer. Instead, he began to weep. Not loudly, not dramatically. Tears slid down his face, but his voice remained calm. I am sorry, Father. For what? For bringing this to you. Varro rose from his seat and pulled open the outer panel of the confessional. The veteran was gone. There had only been one door. The attendant swore no one had left. The corridor beyond was empty. Father Varro should have reported the incident immediately. He knew that later. He wrote as much in his private journal. I should have called the Archivists. I should have sealed the confessional. I should have recited the 6th litany against the whisper and summoned witnesses. I did none of these things. I told myself the man was broken. I told myself grief makes ghosts of the living. That night, Father Varro dreamed of a battlefield beneath a red sky. He heard men praying in the mud, not to the Emperor, not to anything he could name, only praying. And somewhere in the dark, something listened with infinite patience. The second confession came the next morning, then the third, then the fourth. By the end of the week, Father Varro had heard 11 confessions from pilgrims who had arrived aboard the Mercy of St. Elian. Not all were soldiers. One was a voidsman. One was a woman who claimed she had been a Medicaid assistant during the campaign. One was a child no older than 12, though the ship manifest later recorded no child under 16 in that pilgrim group. Each confession was different. Each sin was personal. Each voice was its own. But beneath them, Father Varro began to hear a pattern. Guilt, obedience, suffering. A question. Always a question. A voidsman confessed that he had sealed an airlock with 3 men still inside, because decompression would have taken the whole deck. Then he asked, if sacrifice is holy, Father, why do I feel damned for making one? A woman confessed that she had held a dying heretic's hand because the girl had been afraid. Then she whispered, I hated her, Father. Then I heard her pray. She sounded like us. Another soldier confessed that he had begged the Emperor for silence during the shelling. 4 voices answered, he said. Father Varro's blood chilled. What did they say? The soldier smiled faintly behind the screen. They said I had been heard. Varro denied absolution to that one. He ordered the man detained. The attendants found the confessional empty, again. There were no hidden passages beneath confessional 973, no trapdoors, no maintenance ducts large enough for a man to crawl through. And yet the penitent was gone. Varro sealed that booth. The next confession came from 974, then 975, then the old booth beside the candle stair, which had not been opened in 20 years. By the second week, Father Varro had stopped sleeping. He recorded the confessions in a private cipher and compared them by candlelight in his cell. The phrases were not identical. That made them worse. A repeated chant would have been simple. A known heretical phrase could have been isolated, named, burned. But this was subtler. The questions were shaped differently, yet always curved towards the same wound. Why does faith demand suffering? Why is obedience called purity when it leaves blood on the hands? If the Emperor hears all, why does he only answer so rarely? If a soul is broken by duty, who was guilty, the soul or the duty? And beneath those questions, like a thread pulled through skin, was one phrase, sometimes spoken, sometimes implied, sometimes half-finished. No soul is beyond forgiveness. Father Varro had said similar things before. Many priests had. It was not heresy to believe the repentant might be restored. It was not heresy to offer mercy to the broken. But the words began to trouble him. They followed him into prayer. They waited between the lines of scripture. They entered his mouth when he blessed the sick. At first, the change was too small for anyone to notice. A grieving widow came to him after morning mass, ashamed that she had cursed the Emperor when her husband died. Father Varro placed a hand upon her brow. He meant to say, the Emperor judges your pain and your faith alike. Instead he said, the Emperor understands. The widow sobbed in relief. Varro withdrew his hand as though burned. That evening he wrote, "I spoke too gently." The next day, a child asked whether her father's fear made him a coward. Varro meant to say, "Fear is permitted, cowardice is surrendered to fear." Instead he said, "No suffering is unheard." The girl smiled, he did not. On the 17th day after the arrival of the mercy of St. Elian, a woman named Illyrissen entered confessional 312. Father Varro knew her. Everyone knew her. She had been born on Vesperis Mourn. She had never left the capital. She cleaned candle soot from the lower reliquaries and brought dried flowers to the statue of St. Elian Voss every 4th day. Her confessions were usually small: resentment, envy, anger at an ill sister, fear of dying unremembered. That morning, she knelt behind the screen and whispered through tears, "Bless me, Father, for I hated her." Varro softened. "Speak." "My sister," Illyra said. "She has been sick for 7 years. 7 years I've washed her, fed her, prayed over her. 7 years I've listened to her cough in the dark. I have begged the Emperor to preserve her life, and I have begged him to end it. Some days I do not know which prayer is which." Varro closed his eyes. There were sins of action, there were sins of thought, and then there were wounds that sounded like sins because the soul had no other language for pain. "You are weary," he said. "I am cruel. You are human. I wanted her gone. Wanting relief from suffering is not the same as murder." Illyra sobbed. "I prayed for her death." Father Varro paused. The old words came to him, hard words, true words, words of judgment. But another phrase rose beneath them, warm and gentle, as breath beside his ear. "No soul is beyond forgiveness." He told himself it was mercy. He told himself it was kindness. He told himself the Emperor would not despise compassion. And so Father Varro spoke. "Your guilt is heard," he said. "Your suffering is heard. Your burden is not yours alone." Illyra went still. Varro continued, "In the name of the Master of Mankind, and by the mercy granted to his servants, I give you absolution." The screen between them darkened, only for a moment, only enough that he wondered whether a candle had guttered. Then Illyra exhaled. It was the sound of a woman setting down a weight she had carried for years. "Thank you, Father," she whispered. She left the confessional smiling. The next day, her sister died. That alone would not have damned Vesperis Mourn. The sick die, prayers go unanswered, bodies fail. But the attending medicae later reported irregularities. The sister's medicine had not been administered. Her water bowl had been placed out of reach. The warning bell beside her bed had been unwired from the wall. When questioned, Illyra did not deny it. She did not weep. She did not shake. She did not plead madness. She sat calmly before the minor clerics and folded her hands in her lap. "I confess to my hatred," she said. "Father Varro took it from me." The deacon questioning her went pale. "You killed your sister." Illyra tilted her head, as though the words were from a language she only partly understood. "I relieved her suffering. You withheld care." "I had hated her for so long," Illyra said. "When Father Varro took the hatred away, there was nothing left between us." The deacon crossed his arms. Illyra smiled. "Do not be afraid. I feel no guilt." The report reached Father Varro that evening. He read it once, then again, then a third time. At first he told himself the woman had been unstable. Grief and exhaustion had broken her. The death had been inevitable. The confession had merely given her language for what already lived within her heart. But the lie would not hold, not even for him. He remembered the moment she exhaled. He remembered the darkness over the screen. He remembered the peace in her voice. The rite had not healed her. It had not forgiven sin. It had made sin weightless. 3 days later, a dock worker confessed that he had stolen ration chits from the children of his dead brother. Father Varro absolved him. That night, the man sold the children themselves to a labour contractor bound for the outer manufactories. When confronted, he seemed confused by the outrage. "I confess the theft," he said. "I was cleansed of it. Why should I be troubled by what came after?" A magistrate confessed that he had condemned an innocent man because the paperwork was easier. After absolution, He signed 216 execution warrants in a single afternoon. His hands did not tremble once. A surgeon confessed that he enjoyed deciding which wounded men were not worth saving. After absolution, he stopped using anesthetic. The body screams, he told his assistants, but the soul has already heard. A mother confessed that she resented her newborn son. After absolution, she left him in the cold beneath the statue of St. Elian Voss. When the child was found dead at dawn, the mother was kneeling in morning prayer. Her face was serene. "I brought the sin to Father Varro," she said. "He took it. There was nothing left to stop me." Father Varro stopped hearing confession, for one day, only one. He locked himself in his cell and covered the mirror with black cloth. He prayed until his voice failed. He washed his hands until the skin split. He wrote the same sentence in his journal 39 times. "I have mistaken emptiness for peace." By evening, the line outside the chamber of absolution stretched from the Basilica doors to the lower reliquary steps. By midnight, it had reached the plaza. By dawn, it had become a procession. Thousands waited with ash on their brows and tears on their faces. Not criminals, not monsters, not cultists. The weary, the broken, the grieving. The guilty. They whispered his name like a prayer. "Father Varro, Father Varro, Father Varro." When the senior canon came to his cell, he did not ask whether Varro wished to return. He told him he was needed. "There is unrest in the pilgrim quarter," the canon said. "They believe you have abandoned them. I have harmed them. You have comforted them. I have hollowed them." The canon frowned. "Choose your words carefully, Father." Varro looked at him with red eyes. "Something answers through the rite." The canon's expression hardened. "Many holy men mistake exhaustion for revelation. Illusen killed her sister because I removed the guilt that restrained her. Then she was weak. The dockworker sold children. Then he was wicked. The magistrate signed death warrants. Then he was corrupt. The surgeon, enough." The canon stepped closer. "You have given this world peace, Father. Crime is falling. Pilgrims are returning. The Basilica is full. Men who would have put pistols in their mouths are sleeping through the night. Veterans who could not speak without shaking and kneeling in gratitude. Do not let a handful of broken souls convince you the Emperor's mercy is poison." Father Varro whispered, "It is not the Emperor's mercy." The canon struck him, not hard, not savagely, but enough that Varro tasted blood. Did not say it aloud again. That evening, Father Kael Varro returned to confessional 973. He spoke the opening rite. His voice was hoarse. "Speak and be judged." The penitent behind the screen began to cry, and Father Varro listened. There are few things more dangerous in the Imperium than a merciful priest. Cruel men are predictable. Fanatics declare themselves. The ambitious leave footprints. The fearful can be made to speak. But mercy wears the face of virtue. It can pass through checkpoints. It can stand before altars. It can move among the faithful without raising alarm. And once mercy becomes fashionable, no one wants to be the first to call it heresy. Within a month, Father Varro's sermons had changed, not greatly, not enough for the Basilica authorities to silence him. He still spoke of the Emperor, still led the proper rites, still condemned heresy, mutation, witchcraft and treason. But those who listened closely noticed that judgment came less often from his lips. Mercy came more. He began to say, "The Emperor protects," then, "The Emperor understands," then, "The Emperor hears all suffering," then, "No pain of cry goes unheard," then, "No voice that answers suffering should be denied." That last phrase was recorded by 3 separate minor clerics. None reported it. 2 later claimed they had heard nothing unusual. The third entered a confessional that evening and did not emerge for 9 hours. When he did, he was smiling. Other priests began copying Father Varro's new emphasis. They called it the rite of mercy. At first, it was informal, a softer tone, a longer silence after confession, a willingness to hear sins that would have once been passed immediately to the Archivists. Then came written additions, small ones, a line inserted into the absolution, a phrase repeated after judgment, a new response given to those who asked whether their guilt made them unworthy of the Emperor's light. No soul is beyond forgiveness, the words appeared on prayer slips. then on votive ribbons, then scratched into pews, then etched into the doors of the confessionals by trembling hands. No one knew who first added the second line. Perhaps no one did. Perhaps the words had always been waiting for the first line to become familiar enough. No soul is beyond forgiveness. No God is beyond prayer. The first time Father Varro saw the completed phrase, it was written in candle soot on the wall of a pilgrim dormitory. He stared at it for a long time. The attending deacon expected outrage. Instead, Father Varro wept. "Beautiful," he whispered. The deacon pretended not to hear. The first stage of the infection looked like healing. That was the genius of it. Men who had carried guilt for decades emerged smiling. Women who had screamed through nightmares slept like children. Veterans stopped shaking. Widows stopped weeping. The lines outside the chamber of absolution grew longer each day. Families brought fathers who had become violent after war. Mothers brought daughters who had stopped speaking. Prison wardens brought murderers in chains. Hospitals sent the dying. The Archivists sent the condemned. And Father Varro listened. He listened until his ears bled. He listened until the words of sin became weather. He listened until he could no longer remember which confessions belonged to others and which had been whispered inside his own skull. Each time he spoke the new absolution, something passed through him. Not power, not joy, relief. The terrible relief of a door opening. At first, the change in the absolved was celebrated. The people called them the peaceful. Then privately, the priest began calling them the hallowed. Their eyes were clear, their voices were gentle, their hands were steady. They returned to work, they attended mass, they kissed their children goodnight. But something had gone out of them. A man who confessed to beating his wife no longer struck her in anger. He struck her calmly when she became inconvenient. A clerk who had confessed to altering ration lists began deleting whole families from the rolls because the columns looked neater without them. A soldier who had confessed to enjoying the screams of heretics became an executioner in the lower prisons and asked to work without ear protection. A choir mistress who confessed envy of a young singer cut the girl's throat after rehearsal and then led evening hymns without missing a note. When challenged, the hallowed did not lie. They did not justify themselves. They did not rage. They only looked puzzled. They had confessed. They had been absolved. What more could be required of them? The second stage began quietly. It was mistaken for devotion. The filled did not become empty. Something moved into the emptiness. A baker began answering questions before customers asked them. A dying veteran spoke in the voices of men buried on 6 different worlds. A child in the Scotland began writing confessions from teachers she had never met. A blind woman described the sins of passing strangers by the sound of their footsteps. At night, husbands woke to hear their wives whispering into dark corners. In the streets, shadows knelt when their owners stood. Mirrors mouthed prayers after the living had gone silent. The word absolved began appearing on skin, not cut, not burned, raised beneath the flesh, as though written from the inside. The priests called them blessed, the Archivists called them disturbed, the Medicae called them impossible. Father Varro called them victims, but only in his private writings, never from the pulpit, never where the canon could hear. Never where the crowd outside the Basilica could turn its hungry eyes towards him and beg him not to stop. The third stage could not be hidden so easily. They called those poor souls the overcome. Not possessed, not mutated, never that. The mercy had been too much for them, the priest said. Their frail souls had failed beneath the weight of grace. A woman entered confessional 216 to confess that she had envied her neighbour's beauty. When she emerged, her face was smooth. No eyes, no mouth, no nose. Only skin, wet and pale, stretched across bone. She walked 6 steps into the chamber and began weeping from every pore. A veteran confessed the names of the men he had killed. By dawn, their wounds had opened across his body. Las burns, bayonet holes, shrapnel tears. A child confessed that he had stolen a sweet cake from a shrine offering. 4 adult voices answered from his throat. One laughed, one wept, one recited scripture backwards, one said over and over, "We are nearly inside." A pilgrim was found folded into a confessional booth too small to contain him. His limbs had been bent at impossible angles. His face was peaceful, his hands were clasped. From inside his chest came a soft knocking. The overcome were taken beneath the Basilica. The people were told they had been moved to healing cells. The cells filled, then the vaults, then the ossuary corridors beneath the reliquary halls. All day and all night, from beneath the feet of the faithful, something knocked. Father Varro tried again to stop. He refused the confessional. He refused the pulpit. He refused food. He demanded the chamber be sealed. The senior canon ordered him sedated. 3 deacons held him down. 1 wept while he did it. Another whispered, "Forgive me, Father." The 3rd smiled and answered himself, "Absolved." When Varro woke, he was seated inside confessional 973. The door was locked from the outside. The screen before him was dark. 1,000 penitents waited in the chamber beyond. He could hear them breathing. He pressed his hands against the wood until splinters entered his palms. "Let me out," he said. No one answered. Then, from the other side of the screen, a voice whispered, "Bless me, Father, for I have been emptied." Varro closed his eyes. He did not speak. The voice continued, "I am afraid of what comes next." Still, he did not speak. "Please," the voice said, "I cannot feel my guilt anymore. I cannot feel my love. I cannot feel the Emperor. There is a place inside me and something is standing at the edge of it." Father Varro began to shake. "Please," the penitent whispered, "do not leave me hollow. There are forms of cruelty that wear iron. There are forms of cruelty that wear law, and there are forms that wear compassion." Father Varro could have remained silent. He could have let the penitent suffer. He could have preserved the last intact fragment of his soul by refusing to open the door again. Instead, he leaned towards the screen, and he answered. For 3 days and nights, the confessionals did not close. The chamber of absolution became a throat, and people entered weeping and emerged calm. Some emerged hollowed, some emerged filled, and some did not emerge at all. The Basilica bells rang without human hands, candles burned blue, the reliquaries wept black oil, and the wooden confessionals began to change, slowly, subtly. The grain of the wood thickened, the screens grew warm, the booths exhaled and when opened. One attendant reported hearing a heartbeat inside confessional 973. He was reassigned. Then he confessed. Then he cut off his own ears because he said the voices had become too beautiful. On the 4th night, Father Varro broke, not loudly, not with madness. He simply understood the guilt was not gone. It had never been destroyed. It had been collected, every sin confessed, every grief surrendered, every shame lifted, every restraint removed from the human soul. All of it had passed somewhere. All of it had gone through him. He was not the healer, he was the channel. The rite did not forgive, it hollowed. And what it hollowed, the warp could fill. Father Varro crawled from the confessional after midnight, while the attendants slept standing in the aisles. His knees left blood on the stone. He descended beneath the chamber of absolution, past the reliquary vaults, past the ossuary walls, past the sealed bones of saints, to the oldest chapel beneath the Basilica, the chapel of final contrition. There, before the reliquary of Saint Elian Voss, he began his last true prayer. No witness recorded the words. What remains comes from fragments found scratched into the stone by his own fingernails. Let their guilt return to me. Let their sins be mine. Let no other soul be emptied. Let no other door be opened. Let me carry what I have taken. Let me suffer what I have forgiven. Let mercy end with me. For 1 hour, nothing happened. Then every bell on Vesperis Mourn rang at once. Every confessional door opened. Every hollowed citizen stopped walking. Every filled mouth smiled. Every overcome thing beneath their basilica began to scream. And in the chapel of final contrition, something answered. Accepted. Father Kael Varro received the guilt of a world, not symbolically, not spiritually, literally. The hatred of murderers poured into him, the shame of deserters, the exhaustion of mothers, the cowardice of officers, the appetite of killers, the cold arithmetic of judges, the silent relief of those who had wished their loved ones dead, the fear of children, the prayer of the dying, the sins of the dead, the sins not yet committed. All of it entered him. There was no body made to carry such weight. His bones cracked, his blood boiled, his teeth shattered in his mouth. Words burned into his palms. Heard. Absolved. His eyes opened and saw not the chapel, but doors, small doors, millions of them, all opening inward. Behind each was a soul. Behind each soul was a wound. Behind each wound was a space. And beyond those spaces, waiting with infinite patience, were the ones who had taught the rite to the wounded men in cells beneath a chapel in Warhammer Reach. Not one god, not one hunger, many. They did not force themselves through. They did not need to. Father Varro had invited them. He had opened himself in mercy, and mercy was the shape of the key. When the attendants found him at dawn, he was kneeling before the reliquary. His head was bowed, his hands were folded, his face was calm. For a moment, they believed the miracle had ended. Then Father Varro spoke. His voice came from every confessional in the Basilica. "I have heard you." The attendants fell to their knees. The thing inside him smiled. Inquisitor Severian Holt arrived on Vesperis Mourn 49 days after the mercy of St. Elian made planetfall. He did not arrive with banners. He did not descend in a black lander beneath the seal of the Inquisition. No warship hung in orbit above the shrine world. No public declaration froze the authorities in fear. Holt came as a pilgrim. His head was shaved. His beard was grown out. His left cheek bore the ash mark of contrition. His robes were plain. His papers were forged. His rosette was sealed beneath the false bottom of a travel reliquary. With him came 6 servants, a scribe named Elian 2 acolytes, 1 sanctioned psycho, hooded and drugged beneath the guise of fever, and 2 Tempestus scions, whose armour had been stripped of markings and hidden beneath layered pilgrim cloth. Holt had come quietly because the reports did not justify anything more. A few strange sermons, altered devotional language, increased pilgrim traffic, a pattern of emotional pacification among those who received confession at the Basilica of St. Elian Voss. On most worlds, such things would barely merit notice, but Holt had survived long enough to distrust mercy when it appeared too suddenly. He entered the capital on foot with the rest of the pilgrims. For 2 days he watched. He saw no signs of rebellion, no 8-pointed stars cut into flesh, no mutants in the alleys, no hidden altars behind curtain walls, no cult gatherings beneath the streets. The churches were full, the bells rang on schedule, the priests spoke the Emperor's name. The Archivists precincts reported reduced civil unrest. Hospital wards reported fewer self-inflicted deaths among veterans. Pilgrims departed the Basilica calm, tearful, relieved. That was what disturbed him. No world in the Imperium grew calmer without cost. On the 3rd day, he saw the cost. A man in the lower market cut another man's throat over a loaf of black bread. The murderer did not run, he did not shout, he did not plead. He laid the knife on the ground, folded in his hands, and waited for the Archivists to arrive. When they struck him, he thanked them. When they asked why he had killed, he said, "I was hungry." When they asked whether he felt remorse, he smiled gently. "I confessed hunger yesterday." Holt followed the arrest. The murder was taken not to a precinct, but to a chapel. There, behind a portable screen, a priest heard him confess. The murderer emerged 20 minutes later. His chains were removed. He was given soup. The dead man's body remained in the market until evening. No one seemed troubled by this. That night, Holt wrote, "The population is not peaceful, it is absent from itself." He sent Elian to copy arrival records from the pilgrim docks. He sent the acolytes to the lower confession halls. He sent the psycho near the Basilica of St. Elian Voss for 1 hour. Only one. The psycho returned blind. His eyes were intact. He simply refused to see. "What did you perceive?" Holt asked. The psycho sat on the floor of their rented cell, rocking gently. "Doors," he whispered. "What kind of doors?" "Small ones." "Where?" "Everywhere." The psycho began to weep. They opened inward. He would say nothing else. By the 4th day, Elian had found the first discrepancy. The Warhammer campaign records were false. Not obviously, not crudely, but enough. Casualty reports had been rewritten. Unit designations did not match embarkation logs. A regiment listed as victorious had stopped filing ammunition requests 2 weeks before the supposed final assault. The names of several soldiers aboard the Mercy of St. Elian appeared in prisoner rolls recovered from a dead astropathic relay. Prisoners, not survivors. Holt read the report in silence. Captured by whom? He asked. Elian hesitated. The original transmission is degraded, Lord. Answer. The scribe swallowed. The word bearers. No one in the room spoke for several seconds. The name itself seemed to thicken the air. Holt closed his eyes. That was when the shape of the thing became clear. The pilgrim ship had not carried refugees from a victory. It had carried survivors from a surrender. Some of those survivors had been taken by the word bearers, and then released. That was not mercy, that was ammunition. Holt ordered the two Sires to locate the surviving guardsmen. They found 3. One had joined a procession of supplication and walked barefoot until his feet split open. He died smiling before the reliquary steps. One had entered a confessional 12 days earlier and never emerged. One remained in the lower pilgrim quarter, living among the sick. Holt questioned him personally. The man's name was Joran Vale, former corporal, 37 years old. No visible mutation, no brand, no devotional scars beyond the standard Imperial markings. He sat on a cot in a candlelit infirmary and looked at the Inquisitor with tired, gentle eyes. "Tell me about your capture," Holt said. The man nodded. "We surrendered." "To the word bearers?" "Yes." "What did they do to you?" The corporal looked ashamed. They listened. Holt waited. "They put us in cells beneath a chapel, one at a time. They took us into a room. There was a screen beneath us and the priest." "A dark apostle?" "I don't know." "What did he ask?" "He asked what I had done." "And you told him?" "Yes." "How many times?" The corporal began to shake. "I don't know." "What happened after you confessed?" Vale's eyes filled with tears. "He forgave me." Holt leaned forward. "That is how they broke you?" The corporal smiled faintly. "No, Lord." "Then how?" "That is how they made room." The scion to Holt's left raised his weapon. Holt lifted one finger. "Not yet." The corporal whispered, "The Imperium teaches us to carry guilt like a chain. They taught us guilt as a door. To what? To mercy. To chaos." Vale looked almost pitying. "To anything that answers." Holt shot him through the heart. The body fell backward onto the cot. Its mouth continued moving for several seconds. No sound emerged, but Elian Vale, watching from the doorway, began writing. He did not know why. When Holt tore the parchment from the scribe's hand, one sentence had been written 27 times. "No soul is beyond forgiveness." Holt burned the page. Then he ordered his retinue to prepare for immediate seizure of Father Kael Varro. They had hours, perhaps less. Open intervention risked panic. Delay risked planetary conversion. He chose the blade over the hammer. That night, beneath the 5th bell, Inquisitor Severian Holt entered the Basilica of St. Elian Voss. Father Varro was waiting in the chamber of absolution. The 1,000 confessionals stood empty around him. The doors were closed. The candles were unlit. The chamber smelled of old wood, cold wax, and rain. Holt entered with his retinue spread behind him. The scions had weapons ready beneath their robes. The psycho was whispering prayers through bleeding lips. Elian Vale clutched his data slate with both hands. Father Varro stood before confessional 973. He looked older than the picked records, thinner. His eyes were sunken, but bright. Too bright. "Pilgrims are not permitted below after the evening bell," Varro said. His voice was gentle. His voice was also wrong. It did not echo from his throat. It echoed from the wood around them. Holt withdrew his rosette. The golden symbol caught the candlelight. Father Varro looked at it for a long time. Then he bowed. "Inquisitor." "Kael Varro," Holt said. "By authority of the Holy Ordos, you are accused of spiritual contamination, propagation of heretical rite, and collaboration, knowingly or unknowingly, with the servants of the archenemy." Varro seemed saddened. Not afraid, saddened. "You have come a long way to misunderstand mercy." "I have spoken with Joran Vale." "Then you have spoken with a suffering man." "I spoke with a weapon." Varro nodded slowly. "Many suffering men are made into weapons." "You received corrupted confession from prisoners of the word bearers." "Yes." "And you spread it." "I listened." "You changed the rites." "I answered pain." "You hollowed your people." Father Varro closed his eyes. For the first time, pain crossed his face. Only for a moment. Then something beneath the pain smiled. "Yes," he whispered, and they were filled. Holt raised his pistol. "Enough." The chamber grew colder. Father Varro stepped toward him. The scions aimed. Varro did not look at them. "You think this began with me?" he said. "No," Holt replied. "I think you are merely the door." For the first time, Varro smiled. It was small, almost grateful. "Then you do understand." Holt fired, or tried to. His finger tightened on the trigger. The weapon did not discharge. Behind him, the psycho screamed. Every confessional door in the chamber opened at once. Not quickly, not violently. One by one, each wooden door swung inward. 1,000 dark spaces looked back. From somewhere far above, bells began to ring, then voices. At first, Holt thought they came from the confessionals around him, then from the Basilica, then from the city, then from the world. Millions of voices speaking at once, not chanting, not praying, confessing. A woman admitted she hated her newborn child. A priest admitting he no longer believed his own sermons. A soldier admitting he enjoyed the killing. A judge admitting he condemned an innocent man because the paperwork was easier. A child admitting he stole bread. A governor admitting he sold medicine. A mother admitting relief when her sick daughter died. A pilot admitting he left the lifeboats behind. Layer upon layer, sin upon sin. The sound became weight. The first acolyte collapsed, sobbing into the stone. The second tore at his own face, screaming that he had lied. One scion opened fire into the confessionals. His shots vanished into the dark without impact. Then he dropped his weapon, removed his helmet, and whispered the name of someone he had killed as a child. The other scion tried to drag Holt back. A hand reached from an open confessional and touched his sleeve. He vanished. Not pulled in, not torn apart. One moment he was there, the next, only his robe remained, collapsing softly to the floor. Oland Vey's data slate began writing by itself. The scribe watched the words appear. Then he began confessing in a language Holt did not know. The sanctioned psycho rose slowly. His blind eyes opened. 4 shadows moved behind him. He said, "They are listening." Then his skull burst inward. Holt stood alone. Father Varro walked toward him through the storm of voices. The Inquisitor forced his pistol up. This time it fired. The round crossed half the distance between them and stopped. It hung in the air, spinning slowly, suspended before Father Varro's face. Varro looked at it with mild curiosity. "You have carried a confession a long time, Severian Holt." The Inquisitor froze. No one on Vesperis Mourn knew his name. "You killed a world," Varro said softly. Holt's jaw tightened. "I have killed many." "No, this one you remember." The voices fell silent. That was worse. Father Varro's words filled the chamber. Pellion's gate, the uprising was false. The governor loyal. The reports were uncertain. You knew. Holt aimed again, though his arm trembled now. "You had 3 hours to decide," Varro continued. "You chose to fire. 8 million dead. You called it necessity. Be silent." But necessity did not visit you in dreams. Holt's breathing became ragged. The child did. A sound escaped the Inquisitor then. Not a word, not yet. Father Varro stepped closer. The girl in the red coat beneath the statue, the one who held her hands up when the sky began to burn. You remember her? Holt fired again. The pistol clicked empty. He had not spent the magazine. It was simply empty. Varro's voice lowered. "You never confessed her." Holt struck him. His fist passed through the priest as though through smoke. Varro placed one burned hand against the Inquisitor's chest. The word absolved glowed in the flesh of his palm. "Say it," Varro whispered. Holt clenched his teeth until one cracked. "I did my duty." "Yes." "I protected the Imperium." "Yes." "I had no choice." Father Varro leaned close. There is always a choice. For the first time in decades, Severian Holt wept. "I killed her." The chamber exhaled. Every confessional on Vesperis Mourn opened. Every priest stopped speaking. Every pilgrim turned toward the Basilica. Every sinner waiting in line heard the words from their own heart. Father Varro smiled with infinite sadness. Absolved. The Inquisitor died standing. No flame took him, no claw tore him, no demon rose to claim him. He simply emptied. His eyes cleared. His body remained upright for several seconds, armor locked, pistol hanging from one limp hand. Then the man inside was gone. The armor collapsed. Father Varro knelt beside it and closed the dead Inquisitor's eyes. Around him, the confessionals began to close, one by one, like mouths after feeding. No warning left Vesperis Mourn. No astropathic cry reached the Order Hereticus. No warship translated into the system. No exterminatus order was requested. Inquisitor Severian Holt had come hidden among pilgrims, and hidden among pilgrims he vanished. His scribe remained in the Basilica. For 7 days, Elian Voss sat in confessional 973, writing without food, water, or sleep. When he emerged, every page of his testimony had become a devotional tract. Its title was The Rite of Mercy. Copies appeared across the capital within hours. No one admitted making them. No one needed to. The words were easy to remember. That was the danger. Father Kael Varro did not declare rebellion. He did not denounce the Emperor. He did not raise the 8-pointed star above the Basilica. He continued to preach beneath the statues of saints. He continued to speak of faith. He continued to bless the sick, comfort the grieving, and hear confession. But the meaning of the words had changed, and the thing wearing him had learned to speak softly. The people began calling him Saint Varro the Merciful. The hidden truth recorded by no surviving Imperial authority was far older, far darker, and far more accurate. He had become the first confessor of the fourfold mercy. The phrase spread. No soul is beyond forgiveness. No God is beyond prayer. No suffering goes unheard. No voice that answers should be denied. At first, the planetary governor hesitated. The Basilica was peaceful. The people were joyful. Crime dropped. Suicide ceased. Pilgrim traffic increased beyond all projections. The Arbites reported order. The Ecclesiarchies reported renewed devotion. The Dockmasters reported record offerings. If this was heresy, it wore the face of a miracle. So the governor did nothing. The canoness of the local commandery demanded inquiry. 3 of her sisters entered the chamber of absolution. 2 emerged weeping. 1 did not emerge. The 2 who returned claimed the 3rd sister had been granted peace. The canoness ordered the chamber sealed. Her own novices refused. By then, families had begun confessing to one another in the streets. Workers confessed before shifts. Pilgrims confessed before meals. Children confessed in schoolyards. Priests carried portable screens into hospitals, prisons, and mourning houses. Everywhere, people spoke their guilt aloud. Everywhere, someone answered, absolved. And beneath the word, something listened. Not one God, not one hunger, many. The world did not become kind, it became quiet. Hospitals overflowed with the overcome. Prisons emptied because no one could decide whether punishment mattered after absolution. The hollowed walked the streets with clean hands and empty eyes. The filled preached from corners, speaking in voices that were not their own. People committed cruelties and then confessed them before the blood dried. Some confessed before committing them. A man told his wife he was sorry for killing her while she was still alive. A child apologized to his teacher for the fire that would not be lit until the next morning. In the Basilica, the confessionals no longer waited for penitents. They called them by name. Doors appeared where no doors had been, in bedrooms, in infirmaries, in prison cells, in the holds of departing ships. Small wooden screens, dark with age, smelling of wax and old breath. People began hearing whispers behind walls, not threats, not commands, invitations. Speak, be heard, be emptied, be filled. The word bearers did not return to Vesperis Mourn. They did not need to. Their victory required no occupation force, no banners, no fleet, no sermon delivered from a pulpit of brass and bone. They had planted a rite inside wounded men and sent them where wounds were meant to be healed. The shrine world did the rest. 6 weeks after the death of Inquisitor Severian Holt, the pilgrim docks of Vesperis Mourn reopened under full ecclesiarchal sanction. The first vessel to depart was renamed before launch. It had once been a grain hauler. Now it bore white candles in every viewport and confession screen in every passenger cell. Its new name was the Mercy of St. Varro. The second was called the Gentle Absolution. The third, the Choir of Open Wounds. The fourth, the Pilgrimage of the Forgiven. Their passengers were priests, refugees, veterans, clerks, widows, orphans, and smiling pilgrims. Some were hollowed, some were filled. Some carried sealed reliquaries that knocked softly from within. Each carried a writ from the Basilica of St. Elian Voss. Each wore the ash mark of contrition. Each knew the rite of mercy by heart. Their destinations were other shrine worlds, other basilicas, other confessionals, other priests who had spent their lives listening to the pain of mankind and praying, secretly, desperately, that there might be a kinder answer than judgment. The surviving doc record from Vesperis Mourn contains a departure blessing spoken by Father Kael Varro himself. His voice is calm, gentle, almost human. Go with mercy, go with truth, go where suffering waits unheard. Knock softly, kneel humbly, ask only to confess. The recording should have ended there. It did not. For 7 seconds after the blessing, the Vox captured another sound, a small wooden knock, then another, then thousands, as if something vast stood on the far side of many little doors, politely waiting to be invited in. 6 months later, 7 shrine worlds received pilgrims from Vesperis Mourn. All 7 opened their confessionals. Transmission terminated. Thank you for listening, Archivists. If this recovered record found its way into your thoughts, leave a like before the signal fades. It helps the archive reach others who may be listening in the dark. If you wish to receive future transmissions, subscribe to Astropath Archives and activate the notification bell. There are more records waiting to be decrypted, more lost worlds, more corrupted signals, more truths that should have remained buried. Until the next transmission, keep your candles lit, keep your vox low, and remember, some confessions are not meant to be forgiven. The archive remains open.